Can you name one? Belong to the third world, like Europe. No. Okay, you know Europe is not, but give me one. Africa. Okay, usually Africa, you can have Africa, like this map, or you can have what we call sub-Saharan Africa. But putting these 5 North African countries together with Middle East. Okay? 温为中. Yeah. Can you give me another one?
South America.
South America. Okay, so South America in the map test. By the way, I think they have more representation in the World Cup, right? You know, almost half of the country, you know, half of the continent. I think they have 4 plus a playoff, right? So 4.5, something like that. So South America, that's one. But the book putting South America together with what? With what they call Latin America, but with Central America and the Caribbean. Okay. But in our map test, we have Central America and Caribbean as one. Then we have South America as one. Okay, so that's also third world. Wu Dongling. Yeah, can you give me another one? Okay, East and Southeast Asia. Okay, that's in our test, map test, as well as in the book, okay, in the textbook. But my question here was East Asia. Japan, Korea, Taiwan, are we third world? We're not. Okay. Well, the other thing I think, you know, don't you think there is one thing that separates the third world from the first world is when you look at the Olympic game, the medals. Especially the Winter Olympic game. You know, what are the country that, you know, win the most medal this time?
United States.
United States cheated right now. You know why? Because in the past, they always follow like the country with the most gold, right? The top one. And then in the 2008 Olympic game in Beijing, China had more gold. So America put it like the total medal count. Okay, so now it's the total medal count. But in terms of gold, Canada has more gold than the United States. So United States find a way to put itself as number one. Okay, but still, United States, Canada, what other countries getting more gold or medals in the Winter Olympic game in Vancouver? China, not really. China is not that good with winter game. Yes, some. Germany. Yeah. Surprisingly, South Korea. Okay, South Korea is doing well. So just based on that, should we promote South Korea to the first world? You know, Summer Olympic game, they're very good. I mean, they are better than Japan. Winter Olympic game, they're better than Japan. So why don't we just put South Korea as the first world? But our textbook, written in the 1990s, still puts South Korea as the third world country. So we're going to study South Korea. So those are some of the regions, Southeast Asia and East Asia. Okay, no problem with Southeast Asia, but East Asia, sometimes we have a question mark. Wang Yuhong. Okay, can you name another one for me? Third world region. We already have Africa. West Asia. Okay, we don't use that term a lot, but only in Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have a division called West Asia. 你们有听过外交部有个亚西师 But our West Asia division has also covered Russia. So very strange. They cover Middle East and then Russia and Ukraine. Somehow Ukraine is not in Europe. Okay, Ukraine is in West Asia. But West Asia, I think today we will use Middle East. Okay, Middle East and North Africa as one region. This is also one of the most exciting region. Right? Israel is there, so a lot of things. And Israel is not the first world. So Israel is not a third world country, almost like a first world country. Recently, there are a lot of bad report about Israel. So Israel just started a new campaign asking every Israeli people traveling abroad to talk to people and doing some people's diplomacy to change the image of Israel. Strangely, on television, they show 3 wrong impressions of Israel. First one by a British accent reporter saying Israel, everybody is riding camel. I mean, I don't think that's our impression of Israel. Israel is very modernized. And then the second impression was coming with a French accent. Every city has bombs. It's just unstable. So they want to change the image. But Israel does have the most recent, most exciting one was they assassinate a Hamas leaders of Palestine in Dubai's hotel. Get him some kind of muscle relax drugs, and then just basically suffocated him. Very much like any kind of spy movie. So great area. A lot of exciting things in Middle East. Okay, we need one more area. At least Xu Zhenqi. Yeah. Can you give me another one? Oh, we already talked about Central America. With South America, Central America, and the Caribbean, that's Latin America. I forgot to bring my other map, so I'm not trying to, mislead you with only 2 maps here. Trans-Caucasus. Okay, that's a very small area. How many countries there? Can you think about it? AAG. A for Armenia. A for Azerbaijan. G for Georgia. I thought Georgia is in the United States. No? There is a country also called Georgia, right? So that's Trans-Caucasus. Okay, so there are 3 there. Qiu Wanchen. Yeah. Can you name another region? How about Arctic Circle? 北极圈. I think that's a third world. But I don't see a country there, though, right? Antarctica, 南极洲, 北极海. No, I don't see a country in there. Greenland. Greenland's still a colony, part of Denmark. So if you're part of Denmark, you're not a third world. And by the way, Greenland is also in the north, remember? It's also in the north, okay? Like people in the colder place belong to the first world. So we have Southeast Asia, we have Middle East, we have Trans-Caucasus, we have North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, we have Central America, South America, Caribbean. So why don't we just add North America? No, North. Oh, that's the word. We do not use North. Any other regions? Can you visualize the map of the world? Do we miss anything? What's in between Taiwan and Chile? You know this country just had earthquake. Yeah. What's in between? Taiwan and Chile. 1880. Haiti. Haiti. I don't think so. Hey, Chile is here, right? Taiwan is somewhere here. Haiti is there. Huh? So, but what's in between Taiwan and Chile? What's this? What's this? The tsunami is coming. Huh? Coming through where? Pacific Ocean. By the way, Pacific is supposed to be peaceful. It's not peaceful with tsunami. Pacific Ocean, we also have lots of little islands, right, between Taiwan and Chile. You know, we call Pacific Island country. All those Nauru, right, Tuvalu, Vanuatu, all those are there, right? So that's another. Finally, we need one more region, 张纯生. Yeah. I'm sorry, it's not in this map, in these two maps. You don't know? Okay. Now, between Southeast Asia and Middle East, what do we have? In other words, between Saudi Arabia and Malaysia. India. What do we call India? Belong to which region? South Asia. So India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. You know, most of you like the Lipton tea from Sri Lanka, or Darjeeling. Do you like Darjeeling tea from India, right? So South Asia. But South Asia can go all the way to Afghanistan and then connect it to where? Afghanistan is connecting Pakistan, Afghanistan, all Rhine with other countries. 简少奇，对吗？念对了吗？叶子瑜。Okay. What's the final region? North of Afghanistan. This is Afghanistan somewhere here. But there is a few countries here. North of Iran. All those stand. Pakistan, Afghanistan, but I think we consider them South Asia. But north of them, what area? The poet Li Bai from where originally? 床前明月光，疑是地上霜。举头望明月，低头思吉尔吉斯。It's not Li Bai's hometown is 吉尔吉斯。Have you read this about Li Bai actually coming? He's a Han Chinese, but his family was in Ji'er-Jisi. A little bit like Confucius, you know, originally from Korea, and then go to Shandong. Where is Ji'er-Jisi? Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia. Okay, so remember those regions, but unfortunately. Okay, for the book, we only cover 5 regions. So we're going to skip Central Asia and Transcaucasus. Okay, so those are, you know, former Soviet republics. We're not going to cover. Now, what happened to some of the third world country in the past week or so? First one, let's try. Wu Dechang. Okay. There is a country in South America. Recently, the Constitutional Court said something is unconstitutional. The president wants to run for the 3rd time. Okay, usually, you know, president only serve 2 terms, right? So this president wants to change the constitution. and to run for the third time. And the Constitutional Court said, no, you cannot do that. Which country? Anybody? I know this is difficult, but you need to watch some of the third world news. Huh? Okay, this country, the president is called Alvaro Uribe. Uribe. Oh, some kind of baseball player, right? Uribe. U-R-I-B-E. Never heard of him. Okay. He's unique because he's the only real right-wing president in South America. You know, Latin America, we have a wind blowing from the left. So our countries are becoming leftist. Some are moderate. But we have one country here, the Americans' beloved one, Colombia. Colombia has a right-wing president. America just love it. You know, saying, you know, you are the only friend we have in South America. America said, because you're right-wing conservative, we're going to have free trade agreement with you. Okay. So anyway, this president tried to extend his terms from 2 terms to 3 terms. He already did it from 1 term to 2 terms. Okay. Now, so the question here sometimes, then you look at the Constitution. Say, hey, Constitution usually is very important in any country. You study American politics, the first thing you read is about Constitution. You study German politics, French politics, people look at Constitution. But in the third world, don't think Constitution is too important. Okay, because no one respects Constitution. So if you follow the first world methodology or pattern to study the third world, it's not going to help you. For example, in United States Constitution, very important thing we have, we call the Bill of Rights. Right? 人权法案 Bill of Rights. And Bill of Rights said every citizen is entitled to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom, you know, of all kinds of, you know, freedom from, you know, unnecessary arrest and all those. So it's very important you study that because they actually believe that. Okay, in third world country, also listed in the Constitution, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. It's in the Chinese Constitution as well. Okay, but you ask the Falun Gong people, I don't think they, or Dalai Lama, they don't think China has that freedom of speech or freedom of religion. All kinds of third world country, they copy the Constitution very well from the West, but nobody adhere or follow the Constitution. So if you study Constitution, you're wrong. Okay, you cannot get a real picture. You say, oh, according to the Constitution of Liberia, right? Liberia is a multi-party democratic country. It's not. So you cannot just look at the Constitution. It's a little bit like Taiwan some 30 years ago. We have a multi-party system. People say, Taiwan doesn't have a multi-party system. We said, no, we do. We have 3 parties. We have the KMT, then we have a youth party, we have a Democratic Socialist Party, I think. 民社党. Okay. But how many support do those 2 minor parties have? Less than 1% of the vote. Okay, and besides, they're so poor, they are funded by the KMT. Okay, the KMT said, well, we need some, you know, what do we call, you know, just putting a facade, 表面要放 look like multi-party. So you have supporting the two parties so that it can function. Okay, so they still have people in the legislative yuan and also in the National Assembly, 国民大会. They both have members. And then the most ridiculous thing is those two parties have very small, very limited membership. The Youth Party president, the chairman of the party, of the Youth Party, is 90 years old. Well, maybe, when he was founding the party, he was young, but, when he came to Taiwan and years later, chairing the party at the age of 90, I think you should change the party to Old Men's Club or something. But that's the facade. So do not believe in those. Okay, gradually, I think we are looking at Constitution more and more. But the third world, if you follow the Western pattern, doesn't make sense. Okay, people study Western countries also like to look at what? Oh, legislature, right? Very important. Parliament in Great Britain. In France, we call National Assembly. In Germany, we call Bundestag. In United States, called Congress. In Japan, we call Diet. I don't know why. That's the reason Japanese got so skinny. In Taiwan, we have LY, Legislative Yuan. So, everybody study how a bill become a law, how the check and balance. Sorry, in the third world, very few check and balance. Okay, Legislative Yuan before, in a lot of countries, we call rubber stamp. What do we mean by rubber stamp? What is a rubber stamp? 吴伯庆也在吗？周志勋 Yeah, what is a rubber stamp? You know stamp. Okay, but a rubber stamp is almost like our chop. In Taiwan, we call chop, C-H-O-P, 图章. So rubber stamp, rubber chop, what is it? Rubber band? You know rubber band. So rubber chop, rubber stamp. 橡皮图章, what does that mean? Means just, put a stamp. You don't ask question. You don't challenge. So studying legislature, not very useful as again. So you cannot use the same way of studying American, European politics to look at the third world. The same thing goes with the political parties. Very few political parties in the first world are controlled by one person. In the third world, a lot of time, the political party is being dominated by just one person. Single personality. So that's the reason I think we cannot use the same way to study the third world as we study the first world. Okay, in Taiwan, long time ago, I think it was a joke. There was a course in Taiwan we call 中华民国宪法, which is not functioning for a long time. And then the professors are very happy because it's easy to teach that constitution. And then in the 1990s, suddenly people got crazy. They began to revise our constitution, I think 7 times in 10 years. Okay? And then all the professors just do not know how to teach the constitution. I have one professor decided to retire. He said just revise too many times. He cannot follow. Okay, so that's constitution in the third world. It's either not very applicable or not being respected a lot, like Colombia recently did. Okay, now Colombia president tried to extend his term, failed right now. And last year, another leader tried to extend his term, and he succeeded, but now he has been kicked out, ousted during Chinese New Year. So which president from an African country? Let's try Zhang Peiqi. Okay, do you know? During Chinese New Year, when we are having, the Cantonese style sausage and the Taiwanese flavor sausage and all the, the pork, feet, and then one president in Africa, during a minister meeting, cabinet meeting, military officers came in, said, you are arrested. Okay? No, we don't pay attention. This country, Niger, in Africa, the president, again, tried to extend his constitutional terms in office. And he succeeded. But people said, well, we're not going to respect that. The international community does not accept this. So military officers said, you are such a disgrace to our country. So they get rid of him. Then again, how many people who study the American politics study the military? Nobody studied the military. They study the defense policy, but they don't look at the officers like, the West Point and all those people, because you don't intervene in politics. Latin America in the 60s, they loved to intervene, and 70 as well. Africa continued to do that. So military is something different in the third world. If you compare that to the first world, they intervene in politics. And what's the other country? Also, military generals are being arrested recently. Song Ziqi. Do you know which country? And again, over the Chinese New Year. Well, we are not watching some of the chief of the Navy, of the Air Force, of the Special Forces, and dozens of military officers in general are being arrested for they tried to have a coup 6 years ago, 2003, and now they're being arrested for that. Which country? Okay, I'll give you a clue. One of the third world country which tried to become a European Union member. Turkey. Okay, so Turkey, by the way, Turkey's military had a tradition of intervening in politics. So they started this coup in 1960, and then 1971 they did it again, 1980 they did it again, and then 1997 they also did one more time. So I think they want to keep that tradition of having a military coup every decade. 1960, 1971, 1980, 1997, and then suddenly 2000 is over. They didn't have a military coup. What a shame. The record is broken. It's like baseball. You got a hit, in how many games, right? You score 20 points in basketball for 7 consecutive games. You have a little strings going on, okay? A little streak going on. But sorry, Turkey, 2000 is over. From 2000 to 2009, they didn't carry out a successful coup. They had one in 2003 that failed. Okay, so again, military is very important. The third world, the certain president of Colombia, the certain president of Niger, the coup of Niger, the coup of Turkey, and then Turkey, because it is the military believe they are leaders or supporters of secularism. So this is also important. What do we mean by this? 罗成豪有在吗？ 尹静薇. Yeah. Do you know what is secular? Separate. Okay, so basically separation of church and state. Secularism means you do not bring religion into politics. So Turkey military believe they are defending secularism, but the political parties in power right now saying, oh, you know, we are a Muslim country, you know, we need to have more conservative religious value, and military think they are breaking, you know, the founding principles of the republic. So that's why they intervene, but also show you religion is a big issue in the third world. Okay, another country, again, also during the Chinese New Year, something happened. Where you are playing the games or playing mahjong with your family members, lots of things are happening. Sun Minglun. Yeah. Okay, there's one country in Africa. The president got sick and got away for 3 months, and finally they named a vice president to temporarily taking over. But now the president is back, but he is still like very sick. Okay, but the reason why he does not want to give power to the vice president is because the president said, in our country, the political leaders alternate from the different region. One time you have the Muslim, one time you had the Christian. So we just had 8 years of 2 terms of a Christian president. Finally, the Muslim is in charge, but only 2.5 years, and suddenly he's ill. And the vice president is a Christian, so you cannot give the power to the vice president. The Christian will rule, the country too long. Which country? A friend of Niger. Not a friend. I don't think they are friend. But Nigeria. Okay. So you can see how religion is such a factor. And then, last week we also talked about religion and new countries like Nigeria, that you have identity problem. So those are things you cannot find in the first world. Finally, there is another one. People used to, in the West, and also in Taiwan, we study a lot of what? Voting. Democracy, election, people vote. So you study voting in Taiwan. I'm sorry, I have to say all my friends who study Taiwan's election, they know every election, every voting booth. So you can ask all my friends. You say, I want to run as a county assembly members from Baoshan. Okay? From Baoshan. Baoshan is very famous now, right? Various 12 nationality of people there. So Baoshan, they said, well, according to our record, you have to be a KMT member, okay? Because that's how every voting booth, the pattern of votes review in the past 20 years. So they studied the voting very carefully. But again, in the third world country, can we trust the voting? Probably not. Do all those voting, especially if a countries like Belarus, if they said our voting turnout is 95%, is that good or bad? When a third world country have a voting, voters turnout of 99%. That's not very believable, huh? So if you really study those, you're getting wrong. I went to Nigeria to observe election, and then you found out one voting booth, right? Out of 3,000 votes, No, not a single one for the opposition presidential candidate. Okay, now, do you think that's a real one? Or do you think there must be something wrong? I asked the local people. They said, well, you know, that's proof how this guy is so unpopular here. But I probably can ask you this. Ma Ying-jeou is not very popular in Taiwan right now. Probably not even popular, you know, even worse in Tainan County. But if he is running against Chen Shui-bian in Tainan County, do you think every vote in Tainan County will be voting for Chen Shui-bian? Probably not, right? It's not believable that way. But some third world countries, when you look at this, you know, dead people can vote. All kinds of strange situation, and also voters intimidation. So you cannot use the first world voting to look at some of the third world country. So those are the reasons I think we have to look at the third world. And the book, according to the author, wanted to look at both internal and international. Okay, in the first world, the international factors are much less important in looking at the domestic politics. But in the third world, the international factors are very important. So you have to look at that. And then again, some of the historical legacies or heritage from the colonial rule in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, those need to be studied as well. And also, you want to look at the efforts, at least they try the third world to have or introduce democracy in the third world. Okay, that's very important. Even though we have a different view of the third world democracy because they have elections. But can we trust all this election when so many opposition parties are boycotting the election? They said, well, the election is not going to be FFT. What is FFT? Free, fair, and transparent. Okay? You understand free? Free election, what does that mean? Means you go to vote and you are not going to get intimidated. Or people will ask you how to vote. Or people will, you know, you go to the voting booth. People can see how you vote. And people can carry a gun sitting, you know, very close to you. Well, he's protecting you, right? And fair. Fair means what? You do not allow the opposition airtime, you know, to give it an equal time in terms of debate, or, you know, allow them to organize, and then maybe say you have to have so many members in order to become a candidate. So all those procedures, you make it difficult for other candidates to compete. That would be not fair. Okay? They can do all kinds of things. And then transparent means what? Clean means people can see the process, right? Transparent, for example, like people can see that the ballot box has not been stuffed first. We call box stuffer. What is box stuffer? Box stuffer means people stuffing the box. You put already voted ballot in the box. If it's not transparent, so you come in, you're the first one to vote. Hey, there are already 300 ballots in there, right? You cannot see. So they have a transparent box. means everybody can see from the very beginning. Okay, that's fine. That's transparent. Then there is another transparent that people, I said the armed police can see how you vote. They have no, we call secret ballot. In Taiwan, we go to, little protection, little privacy. People cannot see how you vote. But I have observed elections that they have a long ballot, only one candidate in the top and one candidate at the bottom are competing for presidential election. But they use the same box ballot for 3 elections. Local election, legislative election, because they don't have the money. European Union printed all the same ballot for the same, different elections. So the same ballot, when you vote for presidential candidate, only 2 major ones. One at the top, one at the bottom. And then you have people who can see you voting under the sun, like you put in the bottom of, or the top. So I complain as a, election observer. I complain, and they said, "Oh, you want transparency? We have transparency." Huh? I said, "No, transparency is everything except this one." But that's how you require FFT. Okay, so a lot of countries having election, but it's not fair. So what do we call those countries? We call them electoral democracy. They do not allow freedom of speech. They cheat it, but they do have the formality. They give you the pretense, pretending to have a democracy, but they don't. Okay, so remember one thing very important. Democracy, you have to have election. Election do not make a democracy. Okay, that's very important. In a democracy, you have to have election. They said, well, our democracy do not need election. We just happen to elect the best people, and then he will serve until his death. I don't think that's a democracy. Okay, democracy means what we call interval. People, some of you study statistics. What do you mean by interval? Interval means periodic. Okay, different period. Okay, so separating, you have to have periodic elections. So that's the thing. I think the author think is very important. Is look at the democracy. How they strive. And by the way, in the 1990s, people were very upbeat, optimistic about election, about democracy in the third world. And then in the early part of this century, the so-called the 21st century, they said, hey, democracy is losing momentum. You all know this word in sports. What do you mean by momentum? What is momentum? Momentum. 邱雅轩 在吗? Yeah. What do you know? What is momentum? Very difficult to translate, huh? Momentum shift. You don't. But do you know in a sports like suddenly you committed some turnovers in basketball, and then the other team, wow, just scored 9 straight points, 3 straight 3-pointers, and suddenly we call the momentum is on their side. You know the word, momentum. But do you understand the meaning now in a sports game or, like KMT? I'm sorry, it's not. People say, oh, KMT is losing momentum. I'm sorry, it doesn't have a momentum. Okay, but DPP now is having momentum. Just won the election, right? Okay, that's what we call momentum. You understand? So how do we translate momentum? Some people say mo, the big mo, very important. The mo. 逆转也不能算逆转 ，OK。Somehow people say 气势 ，OK， 上来了，气势 Okay, so that's the very important word for momentum. So the democracy lost its momentum in the 21st century. We do not add more countries. And then some countries we hope we can have, we call democratic consolidation. Consolidation. 什么是民主合并吗？ DC, democratic consolidation. Democratic consolidation means the democracy is strengthened, becoming better, is becoming deep-rooted. That's what we call democratic consolidation. But you look at Niger, you say, well, 1999, you have a military coup, and then introduce a new constitution. They love to introduce a new constitution. And then you have a election, multi-party election. So this guy who won the election served 2 terms. You think the democracy might be consolidated, but then he changed the constitution to run for the 3rd term. And then what else? Military coup again. So people said, instead of having democratic consolidation, you have democratic reverse. Okay? So that's one of the problems in the third world. And let's take a break and we will look at the other problem that the author is trying to do in the book. Okay? Send me email. Okay? My box is always full. So don't send me email. And I won't accept email. Okay? And some of your writing is very difficult. I think I try my best to understand your email, and I still receive some return. Cannot be delivered. Okay, so you check your email. Those of you who have not received, check whether you have something wrong with your email here. Okay. So in addition to the efforts to become democratic, we have some problems because the momentum is not there. And now we have a possibility of democratic reverse, especially bad for area like Africa. I need to use this. Someone put batteries for me. So countries like Niger, military coup. Countries like Mauritania, military coup a year ago. Guinea, military coup. Guinea-Bissau, military coup. Okay, so a lot of military coup. Madagascar, military coup. Thank God for these countries that military coup is no longer endangered species. Latin Americans disappointed me. They don't have a lot of military coup anymore. They used to have a lot. And then they allowed the military coup to become endangered species, but not anymore. Africa saved the day. So we have a lot of military coup here. But Latin America had big problem as well. Latin America worry about dictators. So they used to have like one-term president. President can serve only 1 term, no re-election. But now they are changing constitution. So countries like Colombia already did 1 time, but not enough. They want to change, to try another one. This time, unconstitutional, Colombia. Venezuela also changed. Bolivia, Ecuador also changed. Honduras last year tried to change, almost big problem, right? So people who change constitution, that's also becoming a democratic reverse. Also, in a lot of countries, democracy cannot be built because of civil war, ethnic conflict. So continue to have violation of human rights. And that is the one, I think, the author of the book is trying to look. If you don't have democracy, if you have problem with human rights, if you have problem with ethnic or religious conflict, what else are the problem? Of course, lack of economic growth, okay, or sustained economic growth in the third world. So that's a big problem. So last week we compared the first world and the third world. I give you all the terms, north and south, right? Periphery and, let's see whether you remember that term. My favorite term. Huang Yaping. Yeah. First world, third world. North, south. What periphery? Do you understand periphery? Periphery, like surrounding, outside, and then you are in the core. Okay, so core and periphery, developed and developing or underdeveloped, metropolitan versus 周奕杰、廖宇清。Yeah. Metropolitan versus what? Last week you were here, right? Okay, so you remember, what is Metropolitan? Metropolitan Museum. The New York Mets. Metropolitan. Mets. Metropolitan. Metro. Oh, we have a metro. M-E-T-R-O. What is metro? Metropolitan 大都会. Okay. So the first world is the metropolitan. Then what's the third world? 小乡村. What's the word we use? I call the dichotomy. 二元二分法 dichotomy, like core, periphery, first world, third world, right? So what is the metropolitan versus anyone? Satellite, okay? Satellite, 卫星, right? A little bit like Taipei is the metropolitan, 土城, right? 新庄, they are the satellites. Okay, so you understand those are. Now, the difference, okay, I think the book finally said, instead of comparing what they have, why don't we look at what they don't, the third world, do not have. Okay, he gave you 6, are the things that they do not have or lack, right? The first one is we call sustained level of economic growth. They do have economic growth, but they have satisfactory and sustained. Sustained means over a long period of time. It's not like spurt, one growth, and then decline. Okay, so you have to have sustained economic growth, like what China had in the past 20 years. That's sustained economic growth. Okay, so China might satisfy that factor right now. We satisfied that long time ago, but other countries might have vary a period of economic growth. So that's the first one. The second one, I think this is probably the one most countries having problem in the third world. We call a real effort by the government to redistribute income. Okay, what does that mean? Most of the third world countries, they don't have, we call, equitable distribution. Where's my? I ran out of my chalk. 这里没有粉笔的嘛，我比较喜欢用粉笔。We call equitable distribution of income. So equitable distribution of income. It doesn't mean everybody have the same income, but equitable distribution means the rich is not too rich. They are not too dominant. They are richer than the poor, but not, such a great discrepancy. Okay, so equitable distribution of income, or sometimes people say equity. Okay? Not equality. Okay, equity. For example, in Taiwan, we have university professors are earning about the same. Okay, now there are some good professors now can earn more, but I don't think they are earning like 5 times more than a social professor. So that's still equitable, right? Even I don't think some outstanding professor may be earning 2 times, 3 times more than the social professor. But we still have equitable. But countries like Brazil, right? 5% of the population controlling more than 65% of the country's wealth. That's unequal distribution of income. And some of the third world countries do have, first world countries do have problem, also like United States. But at least United States has put up some efforts to try to redistribute income. One thing in Obama's government is what? Healthcare. Helping the poor people to have access. That's one way. Progressive tax, that's also another one. So that's the second factor. Most of the third world states do not have. Its government are not really concerned with redistribution of wealth to help alleviate poverty. Third world country has poverty. First world country also has some poverty, but at least there were some efforts in terms of welfare. Okay, third one is, again, do you have regular democratic politics? Like, first, you have a regular election, you have representative government. Sometimes they don't. Okay, like when the third world started, we call democratization. 民主化, right? Democratization. They started in the 1980s, and then like Taiwan, South Korea, Brazil. These are the successful cases of democratization. It's a one-way street. We are not looking back now. But if you go to some countries, they started democratization and then reverse, and then restarted again. So back and forth. Okay, like Congo. Okay, I'll give you this country. Republic of Congo here. They started democratization, and the president lost the election. Wow, the one who said, okay, if you want, people want democratization and democracy election, fine, we'll give you one, and you should be grateful to me and voted for me. No, people said you've been in power for too long, so they get rid of him. They voted for the opposition, and then countries like Benin, the president said, oh, maybe I need to work hard. So 4 years, 5 years later, he came back and won the election. Benin has been a democracy so far. But Republic of Congo, the president lost the election, said, why don't I start a civil war? Now he won the election, and he's in power again. But again, another democratization effort need to be started, right? So that's the big problem in the third world. A fourth one is satisfactory standards of human rights. Okay, now human rights, again, we will discuss this later. Obviously, we have different definition of what constitute human rights. the third world country look at human rights, some of them will say, hey, if I am hungry, I don't need religious freedom. I need economic freedom. I need to be fed. Okay, so human rights to some of the third world country and some of the third world leaders means economic and social rights. If I provide people education, if I provide people government housing, health care, and job, then that's a good human rights record. But the Western idea of human rights is what? I can say whatever I want. I can, practice my religion. So Western view of human rights totally different from the third world view, part of the third world view. So that's the reason the third world sometimes do not respect human rights. They think that's not important. The more important thing is making sure people have those economic rights. But first world put emphasis on political and civil rights. Okay, again, if you just look at the third world, you said, well, if you don't want to follow the first world definition of human rights, fine. What is your definition? You said, okay, I want to make sure people are living well. Then how come you have high infant mortality rates? 婴儿死亡率这么高. So I'm not asking using a Western standard to measure your human rights. I'm using the definition of you to measure your performance. And the third world country are not doing very well with human rights. Okay? So that's the fourth one. The fifth one, again, in the book, they talk about protection, equal protection of women, and also protection of the natural environment. Okay. Now, this is the one I have some problem. Yes, the third world is not doing a good job in protecting environment. So when a typhoon hit, we usually have, say, the mudsliding in Central America, in the Philippines, in Haiti, all this. You will not think of the first world having all those mudsliding, right? But because typhoon doesn't hit the first world, right? If you look at what happened in Portugal recently, they have this resorted island in the Atlantic Ocean, and then hit by a thunderstorm, mudsliding. So I don't think they also protect the environment. That's one. The other one is the environment of the third world really bad and being exploited by their own people or by the first world? Okay, maybe also by the first world. You say, oh, Brazil is not protecting the environment. They are cutting down the trees. But who are buying the trees? So if you look at all those, so that's, of course, the first world, they have the luxury of protecting the environment, where the third world probably cannot. Okay, so that's the fifth issues. Okay, women and environment are not being protected as well. Number 6, the final one is adequate standard of education and literacy. Okay, literacy rate in the first world usually is 90% and up. Okay, the third world, you have countries less than 50%, 30%. That's very low. Adult literacy rate means people know how to read, right? Education. So all those 6, right? From the economic growth to redistribution of wealth to democratic consolidation to human rights to women and natural environment, and then finally to education. Maybe some country has satisfied some of them, but not a lot third world country nowadays can claim to have satisfied all 6. Now, my question for you, has Taiwan satisfied all 6? Economic growth, no problem. We're still growing. Yeah, we have setback, but not really that bad. It's an international one. We also have redistribution of efforts, of redistribution of income. Do you think that's the case?
No.
No? Why?
Totally.
Totally no?
Right.
Wow. Taiwan used to be, when I was your age, the most equitable distributed country in the world. People used to say Taiwan has this we call equitable growth. Growth with equity. That's a model for the third world, because no third world country has grown economically, but also fairly, distribution of income. So we were a model in the 70s and 80s, and then suddenly we became greedy. So we lost that. The third one, I think we do. We have democratic practices. So far, we have not postponed any election, even though we do not like our legislators. We think they are pretty bad, but most countries think their legislator. They don't think the Congress is very good, but everybody like their congressman. That's the same thing here in Taiwan. You criticize our legislative yuan, but individual legislator elected from your county helping you, they are your friend. But the legislative yuan is bad, right? So that's a dilemma. But here we still have it. Number 4, human rights. Do we have enough human rights? Any violation of our human rights? Political? No. Economic? Yeah, political. I think so. Last time when I voted in Hsinchu County, the election official would not allow me to wave my hands to my friend. They said, you are asking him to vote for number 5. So I have to say, 加油! Right? That's 0. So no candidate is 0. But if you say, hey, number 2, oh, you cannot do that. Right? You cannot wave. That's number 5. Okay. So is that violation of my human rights? I don't have free expression. Any other thing you can think of your human rights in Taiwan being violated? Not anymore, right? When I was high school students, we cannot keep long hairs. That's a violation of our students' right. So my high school military officers stationed in high school, so they just cut a hole here, because I refused to have haircut, because they said every 2 weeks you have to have haircut. But people grow fast. Some people's hair grow fast. Some people. So I think that's a waste of money. I think they probably, receive some bribery from the barber shop. And so they forcefully, executed this. So I refused. So they cut a hole there. I don't care. I was not dating a girl, so fine. And then they said, well, you don't care here because I put the hair on top. They cut here. Okay. But now it's styles, right? But we don't have that. We even have our. We are able to protect our hairs now, right? Any other things? Oh, you're being violated of human rights in the university right now. You cannot have chicken legs. 不能啃鸡腿了，是吧? Is that violation of human rights? We don't have those. Okay. How about women's rights in Taiwan? Any problem with that? No, they are well protected, right? Today, if you get married, you have a child, you get the registration, you go to the, the bureau, local bureau, they ask you, is the child going to named after the father or the mother, you know, you have your choice. They will ask you first, 要跟妈妈要母姓还是父姓? Okay, so you can choose that one. Any woman being discriminated because of gender in job or education? Has Tsinghua discriminated female students? No. That's the reason you have a growing number, right? Here. How about the science park? Did they do that? Purposely, you know, saying, well, you know, your written test is really good, but you didn't do too well in the oral, in the interview. I know our government did that. Okay, our government, especially like the intelligence community, they don't want women to serve, but women pass the exam. So what they did is right now like, oh, you know, you need to be able to run, you know, in all this in few minutes, how many miles or something. And then they use interview to get rid of females. Ministry of Foreign Affairs also do that. But I think generally speaking, Taiwan probably has the best position for women. Because if a woman works in Taiwan, she is a miss until she retires. You know, she's even at 60, she is 小姐, right? But somehow if you don't work, you're 20, you get married, you become 太太. But I think we are very respectful of women nowadays. You know, like recently my wife and I are doing a project, you know, remodeling our house, and they all call my wife 小姐. So nowadays I think it's popular to call 小姐, but don't use that word in China. Okay? 小姐 means what? Means prostitute almost in China. So don't use that word. Okay? 小姐 is someone from, you know, the underworld. Okay? Not the best term. Finally, do we have good standards of education and literacy? Probably too good. Our education standard is too good to be useful. So those are the third world problems. They don't satisfy all those 6 categories. And so people say, how can you help the third world? That's the reason the book gave you 2 theories. Now we're going through every chapter. They're going to look at what we call developmental theory and then the dependency theory. Developmental theory is basically from the West. Just saying, America, Europe is saying, this is what we have experienced. This is what we went through. So just do what we did before. Okay? And you will become successful. If you have better education, if you create a middle class, if you have better economic growth, you move from agricultural society to become industrialized societies, and then you become a democracy, you become a mature and, you know, sophisticated economy. So that's the Western idea. Just follow what they did. So they would ask you, say, oh, you know, in government, you need to have check and balance. So 3 branches of government. Okay? But ignoring, for example, in traditional societies like Middle East and Africa, religious leaders are very important. But they are being excluded. So that's not right. And also, urbanization is very important in Western idea. But in countries in the third world, urbanization is not possible sometimes. So this developmental idea is just following the West. If you follow what they did, that's fine. You will develop. But then the question, I think, is since World War II, how many third world countries, like we asked you last week, actually being promoted into the starting, okay, to the first world? It's almost like the third world have become bench players in a basketball game. They never have become starters. You said if you need to be a starter only when you start the game, but they never had the opportunity to start. So the question is, how many third world countries have become first world, or at least moving up? There is a possibility of that. Li Mukun, yeah. Can you think of any third world country moving, to the first world in the past 50 years after World War II? 60 years, 65 years. India is first world now? No, I would not think India. There will be better candidates than India. There are some examples, I think. 庄熹微有在吗？蔡宜娟，是不是啊？念对了吗？罗致远，欧梵度。OK， 欧梵度啊。OK, any country moving from third world to first world? Brazil, overall, very impressive, right? Right now, with the economic growth, with a lot of industrialization, resources, middle class. But Brazil, back in the 80s and 90s, haunted by what? They have big problem before called debts, right? They owe a lot to the international community. They borrow a lot. So Brazil was haunted by the debt issue. But Brazil also has this big discrepancies. You go to Sao Paulo or Brasilia, very nice. But there are also some ghettos as well. And then some in the remote area, Indian population in the Amazon River, not very. So Brazil is moving there. Okay, at least what do we call? Not periphery, not core, but what? Semi-periphery. Okay, now, so semi-periphery. We have Brazil moving there. Okay, that's one. So we can also say about Korea. We can say something about Taiwan or other countries, similar. Okay, but very few. And then they said, so the West, you gave us this approach, saying if you follow step by step, then you can become like the West. But only few countries have been able to do that. And they said those countries are not even doing that by themselves. They are purposely allowed by the West so that the third world will not be so frustrated they will revolt. The West will say, hey, look, you do see someone, they listen to us, they're doing fine. So why don't you just follow this? Because if there's no one is successful, and then the whole third world say, wow, you're exploiting us. You are, introducing this world capitalism, which is killing us. We're going to have Marxist revolution, get rid of all the first world country. So the Americans and the Europeans say, no, don't be patient. Look at what Taiwan did. Look at South Korea. So if you follow their steps, then you will not revolt. You will accept this world system. Okay, that's why the dependency theory is so upset. The dependency people said the first world and the third world. The reason there is a first world and the third world is because the first world becomes the first world by exploiting the third world. Okay. Now, if the third world wants to become first world, they have to exploit someone else to become the first world. Now, so we have one example right now. Some people are looking at China now in Africa, saying, wow, China is buying oil, China is doing all kinds of things in Africa. Is China a neo-colonial power in Africa? So can China become developed by exploiting Africa? So that's one question being asked. But going back to this exploitation, the third world has no one to exploit. So that's the reason they cannot grow. Okay, that's the dependency theory. And then the dependency theory saying the more you associate with the first world, the more likely you're going to get exploited. So the only solution is what? To cut off your relation with the first world. It's almost like, you cannot be this big guy, right? You just try to protect yourself. No contact with the person. Okay, now, if that's the approach of the dependency theory, to close your door and develop by yourself without contacting or involved in the international community, let me give you 2 examples of this development. 3, okay. First one we call North Korea. North Korea really self-sufficiency, but never really self-sufficient. They don't deal with the outside world, right? But look at North Korea and South Korea. Which one do you rather be? You want to be in North Korea? You say, wow, that's the training, almost like video game. They can do that, right? China, performed very well in the Olympic game, especially the opening ceremony. People said, but there's one country can outdo that. That's North Korea. In all the uniform steps, 所有的步伐全部一致的，只有北韩可以跟中国比啊。Okay, but North Korea, you want to be in North Korea or in South Korea? Another country that close to the outside world, Myanmar. Where is my Myanmar? It's not here. 缅甸 or Burma. That's also close to the outside world. Okay, another country that is somewhat successful in terms of self-sufficiency instead of avoiding exploitation, Cuba. Cuba is doing okay in terms of education, healthcare, distribution of income, but it's true, it's still very poor compared to other countries in the region. So only Cuba has some success in isolating, cutting off relation with the outside world. Okay. Others, Taiwan, South Korea, and even today, China, used to be close to the outside world. Then 1978, they decided they're going to have reform and opening up. And China opened up to the outside world, and look what happened in the last 30 years. So then my question is, the dependency people wrong? They said, just like I mentioned earlier, they said, no. They said, America used to be open to the outside world, to the third world country, saying, come, if you follow my step, I open up my market for you. America has the largest market. So Taiwan exporting, Korea exporting to the United States, and they all became successful. So people quote, I'm sorry, I'm going to use a biblical quote, 圣经的引言. They said, many are called, but few are chosen. So the Americans said, hey, all come, join this world capitalist system. But Taiwan, South Korea, we love you. You are anti-communist, you are, the Western educated, so we will give you privilege. You will have access to our market. So many are called to join this world capitalist, but few are chosen. Okay, only Taiwan, South Korea, and other few countries. So that's the difference. So people said this dependency theory is saying contact with the West is not good. But if it's good, it's purposely allowed to create an illusion that you should go follow the same way. Okay? And if everybody follow, then the door is closed. Okay? So that's the big issues for the dependency theory. But dependency theory suffered in 1989, late 80 and early 1990, when the Cold War ended. What happened there was a, we were going to look at him later, a Japanese-American scholar who introduced this new term called the end of what? The end of the world? No? The end of Francis Fukuyama. Fukuyama. He said the end of history. Wow. What do you mean by the end of history? He said history is always, people are figure out what's the best way to live. And so you have different ideas competing. And then suddenly, by late 80s, Soviet Union collapsed. Capitalism and democracy won. There is no competing views of the political system anymore, or the economic system. Everybody follow the West model. So that's the end of history because there is no competition, no competing view of the world anymore. So dependency theory, I think it was over by 1990, but there is still something today. If we look at the problem of the third world, we still can go back to re-examine the issues involved. Okay? Any questions so far on this two broad view? Okay, we will follow every chapter by looking at development and dependent theory, developmentalism and dependency theory. Okay, those are the two we're going to look at. If we want to give you a summary, and you have to be able to memorize this by the end of the class, is how the dependency people look at the first world and the third world. They said the first world is moving some of the industry to the third world. And that way they can somehow checkmate. Checkmate 中文叫什么？将军是吧？西洋棋也叫将军啊。OK， 将军劳工，这样通得懂吗？当动词用，对劳工将了一军。Okay, I think that's how you say checkmate the laborers. Just means if the labor, the workers saying we want higher raise, right? We want higher salary, we want a raise, then the owners, the manager will say, okay, you want a raise? We cannot afford you a raise. Bye-bye, I'll move the factory to China. So in Taiwan, have you heard of some of the stories like, people go to work, leaving work on Friday afternoon, and, next Monday morning they went to work. Oh, the factory is gone. The factory disappeared over the weekend because they moved the factory. So if we look at this, in Europe, in America, a lot of this manufacturing are being done right now in the third world. So people said the labor, the workers in the first world is also the periphery. Okay? The capitalists, the owners, the big industrialists are also the core. So what happened is this core of the core, okay, work with the core of the periphery, like Taiwan's businessmen go to China, and China's mayors and local government officials say, hey, we will provide all the Taiwan business investment, great opportunity. You're going to have tax break, you have this and that. They just help you to invest there, right? So the core of the core and the core of the periphery work together to exploit the periphery of the core and the periphery of the periphery. Okay, so by the end of the semester, you're going to have an oral interview, just making sure you can repeat this. The core of the core and the core of the periphery work together to exploit the periphery of the core and the periphery of the periphery. Okay? So that's the dependency theory, basically. Okay? Now, there are some questions on this. For example, the core of the core and the core of the periphery. Yes, I think they might be working together. They exploit the periphery of the core. But what about the periphery of the periphery? If you have a job moving from United States to Mexico, if you have a job from Japan moving to China, are the Chinese workers being exploited? You said, oh, look at them. They work for such a few minimum, wages, and they are being exploited. But some of the workers are happier if they can work for a foreign company. Foreign company might have paid more than the local company. So is that exploitation or not? For example, Taiwan, long time ago, we have multinational cooperation. Remember that word, MNCS, multinational cooperation? We were a LCDS, less developing countries. So the multinational company came to Taiwan. They exploit our cheap labors in Taiwan. The reason our labor is no longer cheap is you girls are not producing kids in Taiwan. We have less people in Taiwan, so the labor became scarce, and we become too expensive. But way back 30 years ago, think of this. People who work for a RCA, for General Electric, people said, wow, I'm working for a multinational company. 我在国外的公司做 better than the local company. So can you say the multinational corporation are exploiting Taiwan's workers? Okay, so that's the question I think we should ask someone with my last name. 严怡玲有在吗？跟我同姓不能来。Okay, 许志杰。Yeah, okay. Now, is that exploitation? If they came here taking advantage of the cheaper labor cost. But still, people in Taiwan 30 years ago rather work for a foreign company than a local one. So is that called exploitation? Is that how the periphery of the periphery have been exploited? Yes? Is that, but you have to think about this now. Is that exploitation? Definitely, those workers in the United States will be complaining, right? They will say, wow, we lost our job because our factory owners moved the factory to Mexico, to Taiwan. Okay, so their workers losing their jobs. But the government said, no, I think, we are helping you to adjust. You can move up to the division of labor so you can have higher, better income with better job. Who knows, right? They're going to retrain those people maybe. But for Taiwan's workers, people said they came here to exploit our cheap labor. Is that exploitation? 晓得那个字吗 ？exploitation， 剥削啊。Do you know? Like right now, for example, if you go to the market in Hsinchu and you have a 卤肉饭 for $10, okay, because they were sold by a Vietnamese bride in Taiwan. Okay, so is that exploitation of the cheap labor? Are you feeling guilty? Are you saying, maybe I should pay you more? No, you won't. So, and think about this. They actually get better working conditions. Foreign companies sometimes have better facilities. They have better environmental standards sometimes, not all the time. Okay, Taiwanese company went to China and said, before saying you don't respect the environment that much. Okay, so we can also downgrade ourselves to your level, no problem. In Taiwan, they have to pay higher environmental, pay attention to higher environmental standard. And then they went to China. China was hoping they can pay higher, attention of higher standards. They said, wow, if it's so lax, then we can do that as well. 台湾的这个厂商到了大陆也自动降标准就降下来很多。Okay, but that's also exploitation. You're polluting those areas as well, right? So think of this. That's the idea behind the dependencies people, saying the core of the core and the core of the periphery work together. Because the core of the periphery is a very small population, can easily bought off, right? Easily bribe or bought off, 收买, right? And then, to exploit the periphery of the core. They are going to be the victims. And then questionable, the periphery of the periphery also being exploited. Okay? Because that's how the dependency theory view the world. Okay, I'll see you next time. If you should look for the chapter I'll send you. And if your email address is not very clear, let me know. Okay? If you have not received anything from me, let me know.
How do you spell the word?